Necrophilia is a term that is described as indulging in carnal pleasures with a corpse. And what if you found out that there is a necrophiliac killer roaming around the streets of Mexico who'd kill just for this purpose? Such is the story of 28-year-old Juana, or Laek, meaning the little one. In the past few years, the Mexican cartels have claimed more than 150,000 lives through their blatant killings and rivalries. In Latin America, the number of imprisoned women have increased dramatically over the last 25 years. This number has almost doubled from less than 40,000 women in the early 2000s to over 74,000 women prisoners in the region in 2011. Although women are still a minority in prisons, making up only about 6% of Latin America's incarcerated population, the number of women behind bars is growing disproportionately compared to men. And thanks to these cartels, most of these women are in prison for narcotic offenses. Apart from selling substances and arms, these cartels also hire sicarios or hitmen. But in the past few years, these cartels have started hiring female assassins known as sicarias. They are also thirsty and fame-hungry killers. Many sicarias post their photos with guns on social media sites. They also flaunt their money and even tigers. Most of these women aren't in prison for large-scale trafficking or violent offenses, but rather for non-violent offenses related to micro-trafficking and small-scale possession of illegal substances. While there are some exceptions, women often enter the illegal substance trade as small-time mules and have little chance of advancement in terms of economic income and decision-making power. Women are trapped in a cycle of poverty and crime because of their limited mobility. Well, such is the story of Juana, or Laek. Juana was born in Jalisco, Mexico. At a very young age, she was romantically involved with a guy more than 20 years her age. At the age of 15, Juana had a child, and the child's father left her. Juana had no money and couldn't feed her child, so she took to street work. Gradually, she met one of the most technologically advanced Mexican cartels called Los Zetas. Juana said that she worked in a bar where the feared Los Zetas charged 5,000 pesos bi-weekly. But the more the business earned, the more the bar was charged. Then a person would come and tell you, "We are from the Zetas, and you have to pay them money if you want to continue with your business. If the bar owner doesn't pay and doesn't close the deal, they're screwed, and the Zetas will pay them. But those who pay the amount receive protection. For the Zetas, it's just a matter of saying, so-and-so is going too far." And at that moment, the hitman arrived to resolve things. But things were going to change for Juana. Her brother got into a mess with the cartel and was killed. She found out that her brother's wife and the Zetas commander who killed her brother had been dismembered and burned. One afternoon when they met another Zetas commander, he asked them, "Do you know where your brother is? What's been done with him? Was he tortured?" Juana answered yes to the first two questions and no to the last one. "That's good. Keep that consolation. You and your mom know where to go to cry, where to take a flower. Besides, you know that they didn't torture him," the Zetas commander told them. What's left to console? Juana thought, but didn't say anything. After this, Juana herself joined the cartel. In countries like Ecuador, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Panama, and Argentina, more than 80% of women in prison are in prison for narcotic offenses. In other Latin American countries, the population for women in prison for these offenses is between 30 and 60% of the total female prison population, and young Juana chose this as her career path. Juana found a way to make money with them. She was incorporated into the cartel at a young age. At first, Juana had small responsibilities. Juana was now officially involved with the Los Zetas cartel and was given the title of Halconeo. As an Halconeo, she was supposed to keep an eye on the rival gangs and police so that other members of Zetas don't get caught. But even that was tough terrain for Juana to walk upon. Juana said that if she did not do her job well, she would be chained and fed only one taco a day. Such was the gruesome and treacherous terror that the Zetas operated on. But as time passed by, Juana started getting bigger responsibilities. She was still a teenager when she saw a Zeta cartel member smash a person's head with a mace. There was blood all over, and this terrified Juana, but she slowly became desensitized to gore. Juana was then honored with a nickname. She was now called Laek, or the Little One. It might be because her stature or age. After being around the most violent murders daily, her desensitization turned into something worse. She started getting attracted to cruel violence. Juana was now a respected member of the Zetas cartel and was promoted to a sicaria. However, the story doesn't end there. In a recent blog that Juana wrote from inside the jail, she gave pretty graphic and gruesome details about her story as a sicaria. She said that the sight of blood was magnetic to her. After she would her victim, she would cut their head off and drench herself in them. She would also drink their liquids while it was warm. But not just this, some Zetas cartel members also said that Laek was fond of pleasuring herself with the carcass of the victim after she had killed them. She would use their head and other body parts to have intimate relations with the deceased victim. But Juana is not frightening at all. A lot of these sicarias and cartel mules often post their photographs on social media. In one photo, Juana looks like a model for a gun company. She has beautiful red hair, a charming body, and an innocent smile. The only dangerous thing about this photograph is that Juana is holding a machine gun in her hand. Apart from the gun, everything about Juana looks normal. From some of these photos, we can see she wants to be seen as a threat. After all, Juana confessed to killing 5 men, drinking their warm liquids, and deriving intimate pleasures from their carcasses. In 2016, she was caught after killing 5 men and sentenced to prison in California. In her blog, she gave grotesque and emotional details of her life. Ever since I was a little girl, I was a rebel, and then became a substance addict and an alcoholic. This throws light on why she was attracted to the cartel life, but these cases get more distorted from here on. She also wrote on her blog that after she saw a head crushed with a mace, she felt that she was scarred for life. I remember feeling sad and thinking I did not want to end up like that. Maybe it was fear that provoked her to become as disturbed as her fellow cartel friends in order to avoid getting violent or murdered. But then as you continue to read her blog, you instantly realize how depraved she is. She continues, "I feel excited by it, rubbing myself in it and bathing in it after killing a victim, and I even drank it when it was still warm." However, this is not the end of her story. Juana has plans for herself in the future. At the end of her blog, she writes, "When I get out of prison, I could work again with the cartel, but I don't want to. This served me as an experience, and not so much because of the confinement. The confinement does not end you. The personal experiences that you lived while in confinement finish you off. Here in jail, my parents died, but when I leave here, I will leave with one hand behind and the other in front. I will find myself in great financial need, and who is going to pay me 8,000 pesos a day to just be on the street for 4 hours? It's always tempting to come back." Juana is still lucky that she got to be a sicarius. Most often, women in cartels are subjected to dangerous and victimizing roles. Whether young or elderly, women transport illicit substances by strapping them to their bodies, swallowing plastic capsules filled with these substances, or inserting these capsules into themselves. This becomes deadly if the substance-filled capsules burst while inside the body. The money they get for doing this is extremely low. A woman who works as a low-level mule may be subject to maximum prison sentence due to harsh narcotic laws in Latin America. However, the question remains, why do cartels hire women assassins? There are many answers to these questions. Some researchers say that in the past few years, men have died and most of their wives have been widowed and left with no money. These widowed women then contribute to their husband's legacy. And there are other reasons too. In this falling economy where people are losing jobs and spending money has become a problem. These drug cartels offer an affluent amount of luxuries to the people. But these cartels don't usually hire educated people. They hire vulnerable people who would do anything for money. And that is a place where these hit women typically come. Most of these kids are either kidnapped from their households at a very young age, or they come from a place where they have no emotional or mental support from their family, or they come from elaborate prostitution rings. Many hit women have dead or fleeing husbands, and they have babies to feed. The cartels give them money, freedom, fame, and even a daunting stature in the criminal world. But these crimes committed by Juana are much more than just being a mule. This is the story of an innocent girl who was lured into cartel life and taken to Nigeria.
You know what I mean when I say the godfather, right? Well, get ready to hear about the godmother of cocaine. She is Griselda Blanco.
If she owed you money and didn't want to pay you, she'd kill you.
Imagine a woman who ruled over the male-dominated, ruthless empire of drugs and violence.
She was the largest importer at the time.
A woman who ordered the execution of hundreds of people, including her own husbands and lovers. A woman who amassed a fortune of billions of dollars and lived a lavish lifestyle of luxury and excess. A woman who was so feared and respected that even the most notorious drug lords, like Escobar, bowed down to her. She was dubbed the godmother of cocaine, the queen of narco-trafficking, and the Black Widow. But who was this woman, and how did she rise from a poor and abused child in Colombia to a billionaire drug lord in Miami? How did she manage to evade the law for so long, and what led to her downfall? What was her brutal life like behind the scenes as she juggled multiple lovers, enemies, and family members? In this video today, we will reveal the shocking truth about Griselda Blanco Restrepo's rise and fall, from her humble beginnings as a poor and abused child in Colombia to her reign as the most ruthless and feared female drug lord of all time. We will uncover the shocking secrets of her crimes, her lovers, her enemies, and her fate. Are you ready to enter the dark and twisted world of the godmother of coke? Then buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. Griselda Blanco Restrepo was a Colombian drug lord who was one of the pioneers of the Medellin Cartel, the infamous organization that dominated the global coke trade in the 1980s and 1990s, and that gave rise to the legendary Pablo Escobar.
Most Americans know of Pablo Escobar.
Right.
Well, she was there before Pablo Escobar on a much larger scale. Pablo Escobar was stealing cars when she was already trafficking 3,400 pounds of cocaine in the 70s and 80s.
She was also a mastermind of the innovation that created new methods of smuggling and distribution of coke, as well as the assassinations that changed the game of the drug war forever.
She basically invented bringing from South America and into the United States.
Born on February 15th, 1943, in Cartagena, a coastal city in Colombia, Griselda was abandoned by her father when she was still a toddler. She was then raised by her mother, Ana Lucia Restrepo, who was an alcoholic and sold her body for money. Griselda and her mother moved to Medellin, the center of the narcotics industry in Colombia, when she was only 3 years old. There, she was exposed to a criminal lifestyle at an early age.
She lived in a neighborhood that was so uniquely criminal that it had been designated a tolerance zone, which is to say a red light district, by the city. Things that were illegal elsewhere were legal in that little neighborhood.
Griselda became a pickpocket and a thief before she turned 13. She was said to have committed her first murder when she was just 11 years old. She kidnapped a child from a wealthy neighborhood and demanded a ransom. When the ransom was not paid, she unalived the child by putting a bullet through his head. She ran away from home at the age of 14 to escape the abuse of her mother and her mother's boyfriend. She resorted to selling her body for money to survive in the streets of Medellin. She also became involved with the members of the infamous Medellin Cartel, a powerful drug trafficking organization that controlled the coke trade in Colombia. It was during this time that she met Carlos Trujillo, who was also part of the drug cartel and trafficker who smuggled hundreds of Colombians into the United States every year. Trujillo and Griselda started dating when she was just 14, and it was under his guardianship that Griselda learned the ropes of passport forgery, drug and human trafficking. Together, the couple started their own narcotics and trafficking business in Medellin.
I believe he was her one true love. He taught her a lot. He certainly taught her how to smuggle.
Their relationship continued for about 4 years, and they got married when she turned 18 in the 1950s. By 1962, the couple had 3 boys, Dixon, Uber, and Osvaldo. Griselda and her partner shuffled between Medellin and New York to run their illegal business. But when, in 1970, Trujillo died mysteriously of liver failure, Griselda took center stage.
27, Griselda should be a grieving widow, but Trujillo has served his purpose, and she has already lined up his replacement.
Officially, Trujillo was said to have died of liver failure, but unofficially, Griselda was believed to have been responsible for his death. Even though this speculation was not proven, her innocence was questioned by her instant move to marry another gangster, Alberto Bravo.
He forges relationships with men early on that are beneficial to her economically and socially.
Bravo was not in the business of smuggling people at the time she met Griselda. He was just an average drug dealer, smuggling a few pounds of illegal substances into the United States. But Griselda had a much bigger plan and ambition to build a narco empire in the US. This duo would then make a deadly criminal team that sparked an unprecedented crime wave that took the US by storm in the 1970s.
Bravo and Blanco are this perfect partnership. And they're in the right place at the right time with the right product.
Griselda saw the potential to grow their small drug business to a multi-billion-dollar empire. So in 1973, the couple moved their headquarters from Medellin, Colombia, to New York. They already had the structure of distributors and local dealers in place, but their only challenge at the time was how to smuggle the addictive substance in large quantities. However, Griselda never ran out of ideas, as she came up with the ingenious method of smuggling coke into the US, the use of lingerie with secret compartments. Blanco was very creative and had lingerie made with hidden pockets that could hold up to 2 to 4 pounds of coke each.
They were creating garments. These garments would allow for the drugs to be more smooth around the body. It would just look like a woman's natural figure.
She carefully handpicked gorgeous Colombian women as her mules. She trained them to dress seductively, flaunt their femininity, and flirt with immigration and customs agents to distract them from paying any close attention to them.
She encouraged the women to dress very attractively, to be flirtatious with customs agents and immigration agents.
Her mules would then wear these specially made lingerie with hidden compartments containing coke and fly from Colombia to New York without arousing suspicion. Immediately they touched down in New York. Blanco's distributors and dealers were already waiting to receive them, and in a few hours, the addictive substance hits the streets. This method was revolutionary because it allowed them to transport large quantities of narcotics without using conventional methods, such as suitcases, cars, or boats. It also reduced the risk of detection by the authorities, who were not used to searching women's underwear for drugs.
One's going to suspect that a young woman who's very nicely dressed is going to be wearing a bra padded with cocaine.
Blanco and Bravo's lingerie smuggling operation was so successful that they made millions of dollars and challenged the mafia's control of the drug market in New York.
This godmother made her name as drug kingpin right here in this country. In Miami in the 70s and the 80s, she is so notorious, in fact, a documentary chronicled her exploits.
However, their success also attracted the attention of law enforcement authorities, who launched Operation Banshee to bust them. In 1975, Blanco and 30 of her associates were indicted on federal drug conspiracy charges by the DEA. Blanco managed to escape to Colombia before she could be arrested, but she left behind her husband and her 2 sons in New York. Then, later that year, Blanco confronted Bravo in Colombia over a suspicion that he was stealing money from their business. A shootout between the couple ensued, resulting in Bravo's death.
She was the largest cocaine importer at the time.
After the death of her second husband, Alberto Bravo, in 1975, Griselda became the sole leader of her narco empire. She moved to Miami in the late 1970s, where she established herself as the coke godmother and the queen of narco trafficking. She was ruthless and fearless in dealing with her enemies and rivals. She ordered numerous murders, many of which were committed by gunmen on motorcycles, a practice she was said to have invented. Blanco also enjoyed a lavish lifestyle in Miami. She had a mansion on Miami Beach, diamonds purchased from Argentina's First Lady, Eva Perón, and a fortune in the billions. She also had a love for the Godfather movie, which inspired her to name her youngest son, Michael Corleone, Blanco. Michael is the product of Blanco's relationship with her third husband, Dario Sepulveda, whom she met in Colombia after escaping from the U.S. authorities in 1975. Sepulveda was also a drug trafficker and hitman who worked for Blanco. They married in 1981 and moved to Miami with their son. However, their marriage was not a happy one. Sepulveda was abusive and unfaithful to Blanco. He also disagreed with her over who would have custody of their son. In 1983, he left her and returned to Colombia with Michael Corleone. He demanded money from Blanco to give him back, but she refused to pay. Instead, she paid to have Sepulveda assassinated by hitmen dressed as policemen. They shot him dead in front of their son, who was then returned to Blanco in the U.S. One of Blanco's main rivals in the narco-trafficking business was the infamous Pablo Escobar, who was her former colleague in the Medellin cartel. In the late 1970s, Blanco noticed that Escobar was closing in on her territories both in Medellin and the United States. The godmother would not sit and watch this happen. However, a bitter feud ensued between her and Escobar. This feud later escalated into a bloody war that claimed many lives on both sides.
Already by about 1975, she and Pablo were fighting, literally trying to kill one another. Each had his or her team of assassins after the other.
One of the most infamous incidents in their war was the Dadeland Mall shooting in 1979, which marked the beginning of the cocaine cowboy wars in Miami. On July 11, 1979, 2 of Blanco's hitmen entered a liquor store at the Dadeland Mall where they gunned down 2 men who worked for a rival drug gang. The hitmen then sprayed bullets across the mall parking lot, hitting several cars and bystanders. They escaped in a van that was later found to be loaded with weapons and bulletproof vests. The van had a sign that read, "Happy Time, Complete Party Supply."
It's the worst violence in any U.S. city since the bloody era of Al Capone.
It was another level of killing that cannot be explained by anything, I think, in her background. I think it's something in her soul. She was a born criminal.
The Dadeland Mall shooting shocked the public and the authorities, who realized that the drug violence in Miami had reached a new level of brutality and recklessness. The officers who arrived at the scene dubbed the perpetrators cocaine cowboys, a term that would later be used to describe drug traffickers and their associates who engaged in shootouts, kidnappings, bombings, and assassinations during the 1980s. Blanco continued her reign of terror until she was arrested in 1985 in California. She was extradited to Florida, where she faced charges for 3 murders, including that of a 2-year-old boy who was unalived in a drive-by shooting.
And she was tied to 3 murders, and authorities in Florida and in New York said that at least they could have documented 40 murders, and that's still conservative because she might have been behind as many as 200 executions in Miami, in New York, and in Irvine, California.
She was convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison, but she was released in 2004 after most of the witnesses against her were killed or discredited. She then returned to Colombia, where she lived under a false name until she was assassinated by a motorcycle gunman in 2012. Ironically, she died by the same Sicario assassination method she had invented.
Again, so she was killed by a motorcycle assassin going into a butcher shop. It was a 69-year-old mother of 4 seen here in one of her many mugshots. As of yesterday, she is dead, gunned down by a motorcycle-riding assassin as she stepped out of a butcher shop in Medellin, Colombia.
Her death marked the end of a turbulent and notorious criminal career that left a lasting impact on the history of organized crime and drug trafficking. Thank you so much for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think of Griselda Blanco Restrepo and her story. Do you think she was a victim of her circumstances or a villain of her own making? Did she deserve her fate by having a taste of her own medicine?
So during 2005 to 2008, our husbands trafficked $2 billion to Mexico. And we would see these houses full of money.
$5 million cash was secretly stashed in 2009 and 10 alone in their house, in the floorboards, according to the court records, citing a federal drug enforcement report.
Apart from the violence, if the cartels around the world have one thing in common, it's the influx of millions of dollars. When half the world is buried in debt, these cartels have found smooth ways of earning easy black money through various illegal dealings or extortions, and live the life of kings. But where do they keep all this money? Banks typically do not want to register their accounts, as they don't wish to keep any associations with the cartels. So where do cartel heads like El Chapo and narco lord Pablo Escobar hide their stashes of millions? Let's find out from 2 cartel wives who decided to spill the beans after their husband's arrest. The Flores twins, Margarito and Pedro Flores, were considered the biggest traffickers in Chicago and bought tons of illegal substances from El Chapo. They might have even been his biggest customer and helped him significantly to grow his empire by smuggling narcotics inland. The brothers ran a $2 billion narco ring and worked very closely with El Chapo until one day they decided to turn against him and exposed him to law enforcement.
Ravi, the Flores brothers are Chicago's most notorious twins, raking in millions as El Chapo's emissaries here before they flipped on the boss and took him down.
So how did they do the unthinkable? Pedro and Margarito took the risk and secretly recorded their conversation with El Chapo. They turned in the recordings, along with valuable information about the cartel lord's operations, which helped U.S. law enforcement file a strong case against him. Deciding to help the U.S. government didn't quite give them a free pass and a slap on the wrist as punishment. They paid their dues for their criminal record. The Flores brothers were sentenced to 14 years in jail in 2015. As the Flores brothers did their time in prison, their wives came forward to speak openly about the amount of money their husbands made and how it was safely hidden in their house. Investigations brought out the wives' involvement in hiding the money and illegally using it when they were supposed to return it, and law enforcement decided to press charges.
Their joint account amounted to cash deposited under the floorboards of a house, more than $5 million in cash that their wives are now accused of pilfering.
In a public interview in 2015, Wives to the Flores brothers, Mia and Olivia Flores, made a rare appearance and spoke about the vast fortune that their husbands had gathered through their illegal smuggling and trafficking. A faceless interview was recorded, keeping their privacy in mind. The brave women didn't shy away from giving us the real numbers and mentioned how normal it was for them to see money stashed in almost every corner of the house.
We would have, a room full of money, $1 to $2 million sitting in the room, for us to grab at our expense, and that was usual.
Not only that, the brothers supposedly employed people who worked in shifts just to count the money. They had counting machines in their home that could count $1 million in a couple of hours. That's the kind of money that they had. But did fortune come with benefits for these women? Did the wives of these cartel henchmen have a good life? Were they able to enjoy the money their husbands earned? Or did they always have to remain in fear of getting caught and stay indoors, guarding their husband's income and watching them exchange hands? Interestingly, the wives to the Flores brothers admitted that they enjoyed their life to the fullest. Apart from drowning them in money, the Flores brothers let the women live the life they desired.
We were spoiled. We ate well. We traveled. We would sometimes want to stay on vacation for a month on the beach and just live life to its fullest.
This sure sounds like the life out of someone's dream. If you think that only the Sinaloa cartel lords or their henchmen had wads of cash lying around in their bedrooms, you'll be surprised to know that the list runs longer. Notorious narco lord Pablo Escobar had billions of dollars that he stashed away in his house at one point of his reign. In the mid-'80s, he had become one of the best substance smugglers and was earning hard cash very fast. He bought multiple houses in Colombia and Mexico with that money, but still had billions to spare. His estimated worth at that time was $25 billion, making the income an actual headache. So how did he hide the dough? He started with the place where most black money goes, the Swiss bank. After putting a portion of it in his bank accounts, he started storing it in containers inside his house because the accounts had all reached their limits. He shrink-wrapped his money and stashed it in plastic barrels and metal boxes.
The discovery of another safe is the latest chapter in the story of a home that once belonged to Pablo Escobar. Construction crews found it Monday after knocking down one of the remaining walls of the waterfront mansion.
But when all available space became occupied, it pushed him to find more creative ways to use his property to stash the excess money. He started using the foundation and structure of his house to hide it all. He would drill holes in the walls and floors and stuff them with cash. A portion of the hidden money would later be found by Escobar's nephew. Nicolas Escobar drilled a hole in one of the walls in Escobar's apartment in Medellin and uncovered a whopping $18 million. Alongside that fortune, the nephew found some other hidden valuables. Apart from the trash bag full of money, Nicolas found a gold pen, satellite phones, a typewriter, and a film roll that was still undeveloped, all safely nestled behind the wall in the secret cove. But how did he know where to find the money? Nicolas claims that he got a vivid vision of where to find it, but many refuse to believe his claims. It's a well-known fact that he worked for his uncle and knew where Pablo hid his money. It was all too easy for him to come back and look exactly where the dough had been stashed, and voila. Authorities say that whatever portion of Pablo Escobar's money that have been found so far, 10 times that amount, is still out there, somewhere, waiting to be found. You might be asking, why do authorities go for the wives instead of chasing someone in a more important position within the cartel? What could these wives possibly know about their husband's business? But there's a logical strategy behind this. Law enforcement agencies often target the cartel wives or women associated with the cartel for intelligence. Even if they're not directly connected with the cartel dealings, they can sometimes provide valuable information as they're always around the cartel lords. They can also direct law enforcement agencies to hidden stashes of money, as they have knowledge of everything stored in the house. But now you must be asking, why did the wives do it? Why would they risk their husband's life and reputation and sell them out like this? What do they gain from it? There are various reasons behind this. In some cases, these women cooperate with law enforcement to seek protection and to get away from the criminal lifestyle or to avoid legal consequences themselves when their husbands get caught. The Flores wives acknowledged that the money bought them a fulfilling life that one can only imagine, and they were appropriately spoiled, but only for a short period. They eventually wanted peace and stability and wanted to build a normal family.
But at the end of the day, we wanted to denounce that life, and we knew what mattered to us was love and family and simplicity.
When cartel wives decide to disclose valuable information about hidden money, they help law enforcement agencies to seize it and any assets they might have bought with it. But ratting out the cartel lords comes with a disadvantage. The whole cartel might come after the whistleblower, and their lives turn uncertain and risky. After the Flores brothers testified against El Chapo, their wives expressed their fear as they were convinced that El Chapo would find them and make them pay for the betrayal.
Once the U.S. government had what they needed, we knew our life was going to change. We knew that we were going to have to hide for the rest of our lives, and that is like the worst imaginable feeling you can ever have.
Mia and Olivia have both been charged with money laundering and are trying hard to avoid prison. Their husbands have completed their prison time, but now it might be their turn to get in the slammer.
Now, as Pedro and Margarito Flores have reportedly ended their prison time, Mia and Olivia are fighting to make sure they don't go to prison, as both wives face money laundering charges here at the federal courthouse in Chicago.
Mia Flores has claimed that she has obtained an immunity deal with the U.S. government, but a prosecutor announced that it's not true and might be a futile attempt on her end to save herself from prison. He further added that a judge will decide whether to press charges against her. Mia also claimed that she had given the government details about her husband's narcotics business, along with an account of how much money he made. She also gave $4 million to an unnamed criminal attorney, who then safely handed over the money to the government.
Flores says that in 2010, she told the government all about their family drug dealing business, yielding so much cash they needed a moving van to haul it when Pedro Flores began cooperating.
But Mia claims this as significant proof of being granted an immunity deal and pleaded with law enforcement not to press charges.
The Flores wives say it is among the proof they were given immunity years ago and shouldn't be prosecuted now.
However, in 2023, the court found her guilty of spending a huge portion of the money held under her floorboards for various needs and recreational activities. The money was supposed to go back to the government, and Flores spent it illegally.
Mia Flores begging for mercy from a federal judge today, asking for no prison time, even after admitting that she illegally spent a small fortune in drug money made by her husband Pedro, who turned on his boss.
While they should have stayed low-key and in hiding, Mia and Olivia Flores branded themselves as wives of the cartel and attended interviews on TV. They also wrote books about their husbands and the secret lives of the cartel members. This earned them the publicity that they desired. They also became greedy and spent around $869,000 on vacation, luxury, and a cleaning business. This definitely ruined their impression before the court.
None of that helped. Putting herself out there, making the most essentially of her fame as a cartel wife, that can only hurt at a sentencing before a federal judge. It almost certainly hurt here too.
The attempt to get cheap fame and lavish expenditure didn't go unnoticed by the authorities. And as a result, Mia Flores has been sentenced to 3.5 years.
The government asking that Ms. Flores receive at least a 9-year sentence, while she requested probation and strict home confinement.
Olivia Flores is awaiting her trial, also set to take place in 2023. It appears that even after spilling dirty narco secrets, the cartel wives got themselves into trouble because of their reckless life choices. Even though their husbands have completed their prison time, it's uncertain when they'll be able to get back to their normal life. Both the wives have sworn that the Flores brothers have changed, left their unlawful lives in the past, and are now working with the DEA towards creating a better future. This can surely buy them some moments of stability and happiness, but they're still under the risk of being attacked by other cartel members for their betrayal. Unfortunately, the Flores brothers and their families will have to live the rest of their lives with this fear. What's the best story you've heard about a cartel lord's wife? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video to show your support. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell to get notified of future uploads. See you soon with the next exciting story.